The other, younger, a machinist in Cologne before the war, is more ambitious. He asks the second man what he does, which for the young Pole is a quandary. Does he say he is a philosopher, which is what he thinks of as his profession, or a teamster, which is how he makes his living now to avoid collaborating with the Germans? And secondly, should he answer him in Polish or in his perfect German? He's completing, after work, in his drafty garret room, a treatise on the Apollonian and Dionysiac personalities described by Friedrich Nietzsche from a partly Marxist, partly Kabbalistic perspective. He feels instinctively that the danger lies in claiming a superior social status, and so he says in Polish that he is a teamster, and the cop thinks, aha, black market, and takes him in. He's interrogated, turned over to the SS, beaten, interrogated some more, identified as a communist and an intellectual, and sent east to Auschwitz, where he eventually dies, shot, some of the stories say, wasted by typhus and diarrhea, say the others. The poet hears one of these versions of the news on the same spring day that he is contemplating a large, polished porcelain giraffe bobbing up and down to the strains of the Vienna waltz on a holiday carousel while gunfire crackles on the other side of the ghetto wall. Warsaw had been a Russian garrison town for a century. Now it's a German garrison town, and the pretty Polish girl on the giraffe is licking a pink cloud of cotton candy and flirting with the German officer on the zebra, which is also bobbing up and down, and the sheen on his high black boots, the poet notices involuntarily, has picked up the reflection of the sun in the small pools of spring rain on the warped tarmac apron of the carousel. After that, he doesn't want to read about French poets walking lobsters on a leash, and doesn't want to seem to celebrate the fact that the world makes no sense. This is how, anyway, I imagine the state of mind produced by the fragments of the stories he would tell me. And here, inference and anecdote give way to argument. I would quote André Breton to him in the English translation, "My wife with the armpits of Nettletrap and St. John's Eve," and he would say, or anyway, now, in my imagination, he would say, "Well, yes, of course, I assent to armpits and metaphors," at which Breton excelled, just as Modigliani excelled at armpits. Who does not love metaphor? Its quickness that gives us the world to taste with our common senses. I'll tell you what terrifies me. It is the idea that this is like that, is like this, is like that, could be all of the story, endlessly repeated, the poor human imagination having evolved this brilliant swiftness of perception and then been stuck there like a hamster in a cage, groping in the endless turnstiles of resemblance. We are to celebrate this as a final conquest of absurdity by absurdity. The armpits of those women in Modigliani, on the contrary, are the hollows of their arms, like this perhaps, or like that, but finally this woman, exposing to us this tender nest or dark sweetness of a wet duck's feather tuft of hair in a gesture, notice, that lifts the breast slightly, indolently, and lifts the rosy nipple and offers it to us, one of the gifts, also sunrise, the scent of linen, of the air before first snow, that the world has to give poor mortals among the terrors and confusions of being what we are. Well, I might have said, if you permit me to get technical, Modigliani is making a generalized representation of the idea of a particular woman, and exactly, a particular being. General because being this and not that, this not like that, this one mortal thing is what mortality has given us in common. And that is the Milošian religion? Yes, he laughs. In my religion, If we're going to starve, we will starve on the pears of Cezanne and the apples of Chardin.